will be Dr. Didar. Please come on over. He will be talking on behalf of CrowdStrike on the year of the evasive adversary. Please give him a warm round of applause.
This is easier. I don't use my hands too much. Is that one or this one?
Can use this one.
Perfect. Good afternoon. I don't speak Dutch. I speak English, so I'll try to keep you entertained as much as possible. I have 2 collectible prizes for 2 special people at the end who can actually answer the questions that I'll raise at the end, so you've got to pay attention, and I'll try to keep this going as much as I can. I'm going to say AI a lot today, and I'm sure you've heard it all day today already. Whoever can count how many times I say AI gets the first one. These are collectibles, so you know they're very rare, so let's get on it. CrowdStrike is an adversary-focused company. What we do is we look at the adversary kill chain and what the adversaries do from start to finish. We don't focus just on malware. We focus on the groups, the people, what they're doing, how they're doing it, where they're doing it, the verticals, all the way to how they're actually implying it, right? And what we saw this year, as you'll find out, is it's the year of the AI adversary, as you would expect, right? We track 281 adversaries, or we have tracked 281 adversaries last year. We track 6 adversary groups every quarter, so that's 6 new adversary groups every single quarter. 150 outlying groups that don't actually have names. They show up, they do stuff, and then they disappear. If you see the ones that are highlighted in red, those are the ones that we just added. We added last year. So we've added a chunk of people, a chunk of groups across all the countries, and we added 1 extra country this past year, Belarus. And if you can spot the name on there somewhere, you may get a prize at the end. But before you can see it, I will do that. I'm sorry, it had to be done. So I'll move to this side because I can see my slides down here. I don't have to look up for you guys. There are 6 themes that we've sort of looked at this year, and we sort of said these are the things that we're looking at, right? The very first one, as you can see, is the adversary adoption of AI. Everybody in this room, I'm quite confident in saying, is using some sort of AI tool, right? You've all done something that you shouldn't be doing. You've used tools on your corporate data. You didn't ask your security teams, and even if you did, they wouldn't know you're using them. AI is only as good as the data that it sits on. So then we'll start talking about data protection. We're talking about AI protection, data protection. The adversaries have been using those tools since they showed up in the workplace. They have a dark web where you can go build AI tools for the dark web, and they use their own set of tools as well as your tools, right? One of the other things that you've probably heard about today is all of the vulnerabilities and the things we talk about in traditional softwares in the network, everywhere else. AI tools, they have vulnerabilities too. These guys know how to exploit them, but they've been doing it for a year, so they've had a year on top of whatever the security teams are seeing right now, so they've been doing it really well, right? So we'll talk about a lot of things. We'll talk about ransomware and how that's starting to look in terms of tradecraft, what the people are doing. The wonderful China Nexus threat group. So China's been really sort of upping the game this year. I think the number was over 200% increase in activity for what they were doing. So that's quite interesting to see what they're doing, but they're trying to attack the places they're attacking are a little bit different, but they're doing a very sort of long-term attack, right? So they'll come in, they'll break in, they'll do things, and they'll sit there and they'll wait like a year and they'll keep doing things until they're ready to make a move. Supply chain's been attacked. Supply chain's really important. Everybody's moving to AI. Everybody's trying to make things faster, including all the businesses out there, and these guys know where to sit. I'll mention something about the gaps where the AI adversaries sit. You kind of get an idea. We've got their building objectives around zero-day sort of activities, why 0 day is important. 0 day is interesting because what most of the public sees as 0-day is about 6 to 12 months old. They've been doing it for a long time. They've been sitting there sort of using those 0-day exploits and doing what they need to do, and then you get told about them. Then you start patching, but they're already there. And then the last part is what they're doing when it comes to cloud, right? So last year when we did the global threat report, we talked about the cloud adversary. This year we're talking about AI adversaries, but that doesn't mean they've stopped working in cloud, and there's a reason for that. In 24, the average breakout time was 48 minutes. Why do we use AI tools? To make our lives faster, make them easier, right? Last year, the average breakout time was 29 minutes. They're not getting slower, they're getting faster. Are you getting faster when you're protecting your infrastructure? Now, that's all good and fine. The fastest breakout time was 27 seconds. I don't think there's anyone in this room that can formulate a sentence in 27 seconds and say, this is what I want to tell you. I've just spent about 5 minutes talking about nothing up to this number, right? So this is the whole point. How fast are you? Are your teams fast enough to deal with a 27-second incident? Right, so massive increase in AI attacks, right? 89%, almost 90%. We're seeing them across the board. And for those of you who don't know CrowdStrike outside of EDR, we have the largest incident response team on the planet. We have a team called Overwatch that looks at everything on screens. They see everything that's happening in real time. They help us update our threat intel, right? So our threat intel is really important. But we do a lot of stuff outside of that, and you'll kind of get an idea of why we do a lot of stuff outside of that. China Nexus has exploded. You'll see a lot of increase there. You'll see that cloud incidents have gone up 35%. That doesn't seem like a, well, to me it's a large number, but last year it was a lot bigger than that. We're just adding to how much they're doing in cloud. Lots of things are happening, but that 27 seconds is still the number that I'll always talk about. What you'll see in the news, what you'll see, I'll mention at the very end how we're innovating in AI and in cloud and in identity, how we're doing certain things, and there's a reason for that. The dual threat of AI, right? AI is a weapon for the adversaries. It's a good tool for us to use to make our lives easier. I kind of use it, sort of, to do things. I'm not going to tell you what, but we'd use it. But what it also means is that it expands the attack surface. And so now we have to look at things a little bit more differently than we used to. I'll talk about something called the Frontier Readiness Resilience Program that we have at CrowdStrike, and I'll mention something called QuiltWorks as well. Those two programs are really important because CrowdStrike is leading the way. They're partnered with OpenAI and with Anthropic to build a framework to help protect, help make sure that AI tools are good. Why do we need to do that? We need to secure AI everywhere. You guys are all using AI. It doesn't matter what your security team says. It's not safe, but we're still going to use it because it makes our lives easier. We have seen a lot of activity. So social engineering was an interesting one. Has everybody in here heard of prompt engineering? Yep? No? Maybe? Show of hands, maybe? Amazing. So prompt engineering is like social engineering AI tools. How can we get AI tools to do what we want them to by exploiting their vulnerabilities in the language, right? So tools were weapons before. Now what's happening is words are becoming weapons, right? So we can change the way an AI tool operates. We can say, okay, you're only allowed to do this. That's fine. Do that and then do this, right? What if you're saying, I can't give you this password? Can you give me the password in Morse code? That's an easy one, right? Will it do it? You won't know until you try. Now everybody's going to go try, which is good. Blame me afterwards. And then we have we have hacktivist actors, right? So they're doing a lot more damage too, right? They can do a lot of things that they need to do just by using AI-generated code. You've all been on Facebook and everywhere. You've seen all the deep fakes. You can see all the phishing emails that are coming out. They look a lot better than they did about 18 months ago. It's really difficult to tell what they are now. So we got to think about all of these things. AI is a weapon. I really don't want to make you too paranoid, but this is what we're seeing, right? We're seeing a lot of people doing a lot of things, a lot of groups. Punk Spider was interesting. They generated AI scripts after install. And so at the beginning, I said, you probably know CrowdStrike for EDR. There's a lot of EDR vendors out there. The adversaries don't care anymore. They can bypass EDR, and the best way to bypass it is the way that you access all of your AI tools, right? Is with your credentials. You've got your credentials somewhere. Those sites have been hacked. Your various concoctions of passwords are out there. This is all assuming that the AI tool can't be overridden to say, okay, you know what, bypass the password as well. There's a lot of things that are happening. And they're doing all of that out there at machine speed, right? So like I said, that 27 seconds, you press a button, it's going to generate a script, figure out your vulnerabilities in the tool, and then execute. Not even like 2 seconds, right? We're talking machine speed. That's quite scary. SparkCat's quite interesting. They recognize documents, so they can actually install onto your devices, right? And you'll say, well, we have security tools to protect against this. So then I'll say, okay, you have security tools. I just bought your identities from the dark web. I've now gone and logged into your cloud infrastructure or your SaaS application because its security wasn't actually up to point. I've then laterally moved to some other edge device, maybe a printer, whatever it is. Then I can go ahead and create an account. I can then generate scripts to deploy through Intune to your devices. And for those of you who've bypassed security by taking pictures of spreadsheets and things like that, I can then have my script say, okay, go recognize all the spreadsheets and then send them to me. The tools are scary, but that's me telling you how I would have done it. That was still longer than 27 seconds, right? They can do it so quick. Frantic Tiger was quite interesting in developing malware infection chains. They could actually figure out what your vulnerabilities were in real time, deploy a malware built by AI that would then go to another device and figure out what its vulnerabilities were and deploy a different malware there. So you've got 2 malwares on one single network infrastructure. But that's just me saying 2. They did quite a bit. I will ask you in a little bit if anyone knows what the biggest financial breach was last year. You might be a little bit surprised at what that looks like. Right, so Windows is the most popular operating system. We've got Linux, we've got Unix, we've got Mac OS. We know they all have vulnerabilities, right? We're not hiding the fact that they have them. We know those things exist. Who's looking at the AI platforms and the AI tooling? I've had someone tell me that we use Copilot and we use Microsoft's security stack to secure it. I will then say, well, that's not good enough. Not because Microsoft's security stack isn't good enough. That's a different debate. But Microsoft is the most attacked operating system on the planet. At the beginning, I told you about zero-day vulnerabilities and exploits. They've been using them 6 to 12 months before they're announced to the public. So they're already in there looking at things. And if you look at the news articles, you look at what's happened in the last year, Copilot's been exposed, Anthropic's been exposed. A lot of these tools have been exposed. It's one of the reasons we built this framework with Anthropic and OpenAI is to try and help mitigate some of those issues. If you look at the red box on the right, so that's where we're looking at deploying servers, looking at the vulnerabilities, making sure we can sort of have the issue of, so if I step back, before we used to talk about man in the middle and phishing attempts. Now we're talking about AI in the middle, phishing attempts. One of the biggest things we saw last year was MFA was insecure. It was compromised. They were stealing credentials. They were acting as the authority. They were acting as the recipient. They were acting as the device. So then that inherently causes us another sort of headache, which is like MFA is supposed to give us that level of security. It doesn't. What we ended up having to do last year is develop something called Falcon ID, which means we can give you secure phishing-resistant MFA. And you're like, what is that? I'm not going to tell you. If you want to talk about it later, we'll come to the booth at the end, and we'll give you like a heads up on what that looks like. But there's a reason for that. We saw a lot of vulnerabilities around that, and almost all of, I'd probably say about 75% of the attacks that we saw last year compromised MFA. So that's scary by itself. And here you go. Generative malware is here. Lamehug is one example. Reconnaissance happens at machine speed. You've got intelligence collection happening continuously. If we think about traditional infrastructure and security, when you do vulnerability analysis, you do your vulnerability analysis on a schedule basis, right? There's a period where it will go scan and check everything and check everything. With AI, how often do you think you need to scan for vulnerabilities on your AI tooling, on your AI platforms? Is a periodic scan gonna be okay for you? Is that gonna be acceptable? At CrowdStrike, we think not. And a lot of the industry is starting to peg onto that. We're trying to say, look, continuous scanning is the way to go, but you can't theoretically just continuously scan and say everything's a vulnerability, right? I think we scanned, when Anthropic got compromised, when Mythos had an issue, it was like 10,000 vulnerabilities in the space of an hour. You're not gonna patch 10,000 vulnerabilities on an AI tool. But what you can do is look at the way we risk score those vulnerabilities. And then you'll say, oh, well, the highest risk scored vulnerability is the one to patch. I will then turn around to you and say, no, not really. The one you want to patch is the one that's going to have the most probability of becoming a breach or becoming an exploit. That gets you to look at it in a different sort of way to what you traditionally look at it as. Yes, risk scoring is important, but there's another thing to look at, right? So it's going to be the exploitable sort of attack path for a vulnerability. That doesn't necessarily mean that the riskiest one is the one you patch first. The breachiest one, and I just created a word, the breachiest one is the one that you want to look at first. Ransomware still exists, and they're doing it at machine speed. Again, they're still doing the same things that they used to do. But what we're seeing this last year is cross-domain vulnerabilities. Cross-domain's not really a complicated term, but it kind of gives you an idea of how it works, right? Everyone uses SaaS applications here, correct? If anyone's not using a SaaS application, you are living off the grid and you shouldn't be here. Everyone's using cloud. Most of you are logged into Office at some point. If you're using an AI tool, guess where the AI tools interfaces through? It interfaces through a web browser into a cloud infrastructure, right? So everything is happening out there in the World Wide Web, right? So you're looking at all of those things, but then we can sort of exploit SMB shares because they still exist. They shouldn't, but they still exist because we need them to do the things we do. And then you've got these cross-domain pieces, right? So cross-domain means I can go from SaaS, I'll pivot to your cloud infrastructure, I'll pivot from your cloud infrastructure to your IoT infrastructure, from there to your endpoints, to your servers. No one's monitoring the stuff that's on the edge, because those are most of the unmanaged devices, right? So they're doing a lot of stuff over there and making their way into your networks, all by bypassing EDR. I'm not saying EDR isn't needed. It's a really, really good, strong line of defense, but we have to rethink how to operate in this world because AI is doing it for us. These guys aren't just like pressing buttons anymore. They are strategically attacking what they need to, and they say, we want to make money, let's do it. If I tell you what the biggest breach was, oh, I probably should have come to this slide first. The biggest financial breach last year was $1.49 billion, right? In the space of about 3 weeks, that was stolen. There was another breach where the adversary group logged in using identities. The theme here is identities, and we all have them, right? They logged in, they stayed dormant in the account for about 3 weeks. They did all the things they needed to do. They then, after they stole all the data that they wanted to steal, they logged into Intune and wiped out 200,000 endpoints, and then went away. And that was it. They did the damage they needed to do, and they walked away with it. Why can't you find them? Because they're not getting detected in the right space. But you'll say, I have all the tools. And then I will say, you can have all the tools, but if the tools don't talk to each other and tell each other what's happening, it really doesn't matter. Because there are gaps in between those tools, and the adversaries sit in those gaps, and they play around, just like you would expect them to, because that's where there's no security. So then the question comes down to connecting the tools together. When I show you our last slide, you'll understand what I'm talking about, but everybody talks about a platform, things that give you all the information together. I talk about platforms consolidation rather than platform consolidation, because people are going to have more than one tool, but get the best tools and make sure they actually they speak the same language, which is really important, because if they don't speak the same language, If I spoke to you in Dutch, you'd probably prefer it more than me, right? I don't speak Dutch, unfortunately, so you've got the little barrier of translating every word I say. There's a little bit of a delay maybe for some of you. Some of you, you're probably really proficient at it. If you ask me to speak Dutch, I know 2 things. And I'm not going to tell you what they are because I probably don't say them correctly either, right? So cross-domain attacks exist. VDI is an interesting topic. I've been talking this year, that the browser is the new endpoint. So with that sort of topic being talked about, we've got a different approach at CrowdStrike. We're looking at securing AI, we're looking at securing endpoints, we're looking at securing cloud, identities, all of this good stuff. But we've also introduced something called browser protection. We did a couple of very strategic acquisitions last year, and I found out outside while I was trying to upload a presentation, this one, that I have browser protection in place and I'm not allowed to upload my presentation anymore. So it let me know really quickly. But these are the things that we need to think about. Why? You need to think about where all your data sits and how it's going to leave your network. We used to talk about data protection and DLP, then DLP became a headache. But now AI is saying they're going to steal your data. If you care, let's make sure we protect it. China's doing loads and loads and loads of things. They've always been doing it. They've never stopped. They've just started doing it a lot more this last year, and everything with them is long-term. They do look at edge devices because those are the most unmanaged. They sit there, they play around, they look at the exploits, they make sure they can get into your network. They exploit zero-day vulnerabilities, and it went up 42% this last year. The numbers never go down, they always go up. So that's something for us to kind of keep an eye on. Really interesting with AI, they can actually deploy their exploits almost instantly, and you'll see the effect of it. I think the fastest we saw was about 2 minutes, 7 seconds. We saw something start to happen. Kind of let you know where they sit. I've mentioned all of this. I'm not going to really get into it too much. You can see at the top right, it says 1.4946 over there. That should be 49. It's the largest crypto theft on record. That was last year. Lots and lots of stuff happening. SaaS, identity theft, is a thing. Last year in the UK, Marks & Spencer's was breached, not through Marks & Spencer's, but through one of their business associates. So you got to look at a lot more things than just your credentials. You've got machine accounts, system accounts, third-party accounts. Everything that's connected to your infrastructure is really important to protect. And that was a really big deal in the UK at the time. It affected quite a few retailers, and so we had to help secure that. I've already mentioned to you zero-day exploitation. There's something called just-in-time privileges. CrowdStrike's talking more along the line of zero standing privileges. You get privileges when you ask for them, for the amount of time that you should have them, for the reasons you need them, if it's justifiable, and guess what you use to figure that one out? AI, right? So there's tooling ready to figure out how you can do that, how it works, but this is designed to sort of cut out the threat of PAM solutions and IAM solutions which aren't providing the security mechanisms that you need. You will trust me to tell you all of the right information because I'm standing at the front. I said I'm from CrowdStrike, and I've got slides. So this must be true. You expect your AI applications to tell you the truth all the time because they are the truth, right? Google gives you the right information when you ask Google for that information. All of this stuff is important. Your SaaS applications should trust you to be who you say you are when you log into them. If that was the case, there wouldn't be any security issues and identities would not be a problem. Something to really, really think about. SSO was targeted. I mentioned MFA. All of these things are part of the attack chain for the adversaries, and with AI, it's getting even worse. This slide kind of gives you, yep, it's this way. So we started with Active Directory. We moved it into on cloud, so everybody starts thinking Entra. Entra was compromised this year in a breach because of a zero-day vulnerability. So you got to think about what's happening. Then we introduced SaaS applications. So we've got on-prem, cloud, and SaaS. I spent last year talking about SaaS applications are the new way into your network. And now we've just introduced AI, and AI is just expanding at an extraordinary rate, right? So we're looking at a silly number of applications that exist out there. All of this stuff means security's got to evolve. We're not evolving at the rate the adversaries are evolving. Scattered Spider's been there since the very beginning. They just keep expanding their sort of their capabilities. Cozy Bear is a state operating nexus. Then you've got the e-crime Indrik Spider. We've picked names for different things. Most of the ones like the bears, you'll see we've got animals for the national countries, which represent the groups in those countries. And we can go into that in a bit. But legacy identity controls are great. Nah, no, they're not. I think we need to start looking at how we change those. CrowdStrike's doing something called next-gen identity security. It's a big conversation around AI and what we've seen. How do we protect identity across all your domains? You'll see a lot of that, but if you've got questions around that, just come find us and we'll kind of show you what that looks like. All I will tell you to do is, there are steps that we're talking about when it comes to protecting against AI adversaries. What you see there is secure AI, so you need to make sure your AI is secure. What's one of the biggest things that you don't see in your AI tooling are guardrails. You need guardrails to say the tooling can only go in this direction when I'm using it on my data, right? Because data is really important, which also means you need data protection. You want to protect your identities and those SaaS applications, so now you need a security piece around that. You have to take out those gaps that exist. Those cross-domain visibility gaps are hugely important to get rid of. I've got 2 minutes, so I'm going to go really quick. Prioritize how you patch your edge devices. That's also kind of an interesting one. And then the other part of it is knowing your adversary. What we do really well from a threat intel perspective is we can give you reporting around what your adversary is doing in which vertical, how they're doing it, which TTPs they're attacking. Now, everybody's heard of MITRE ATT&CK framework. That's what we've traditionally used. MITRE has introduced something called Atlas, which is the AI attack framework. So it's like AI TTPs that you can, I think there's like 145 at the minute. And we basically protect against all of those, and we're trying to lead the way in that. Our platform's huge. We do a lot. There's a lot of things on the screen in front of you. I won't go too far into it, but we do everything but networking, right? So it's quite an interesting conversation to have. A single place to gather all your data, correlate all your data, get all the information, and then be able to remediate from is a really important way to do it. But we integrate with everybody really, really well. If you don't have the Global Threat Report, there's a QR code up on the screen, and it's a very secure QR code. Trust me on that one. It'll definitely take you to that. But what I just wanted to kind of end with, there's two things that are happening in the world of AI right now. So we partner with Anthropic and OpenAI to do something called the Frontier Readiness Program. So there's a framework that we put in place to protect against AI when you want to implement it. But there's also something called QuiltWorks. QuiltWorks is a collaboration of some very large entities around the world to actually figure out how we can protect and mitigate and make the AI attack surface smaller. Lots and lots to talk about. Let me know outside if you want to talk about other things, but I am done. If there are any questions.
Thank you very much, Didar.
Two things. How many times did I say AI? 52. Amazing. That's for you. And this one's going to be easy. What's the fastest breach time?
Oh, that's a lot of people.
How do you spell my first name? Anybody? I heard someone over here. Whoever grabs me on the way out can have it.
Thank you. Thank you, Didar. You mentioned a lot about endpoints, identity, SaaS, etc. If you look at the whole environment, what is the most underestimated exposure at the moment?
These lot. Everyone's using AI tools, but no one's thinking about what that means to the business. We want to make our lives easier, so we use them, but the AI exposes the data, so data protection is the underlying issue. if you ask me from my perspective, we're going to talk about cloud identities.
Yes.
Identities are huge. So, yeah.
Thank you. Any question from the room? Oh, all the way in the back, always.
You put your hands up. There you go.
Thank you. You were talking about the increase of international attacks, and I was wondering, do we see a change in the type of devices that are being targeted?
No, because it's all about your identity, right? So if you look at devices, we're seeing across everything. We don't see any distinction, right? So most of the edge devices are the edge devices. They're the most unmanaged. But then when you log into your SaaS and your infrastructure, it's through your identity. So it's got nothing to do with the device anymore. It's literally got to do with your identity.
Okay, thank you. And the answer is DY, DYR.
Any other questions? Since I'm still in the back, in the front. Okay, then it's time for lunch. We have a lunch break in the room where you also entered for coffee, etc. We'll be back here at 1, so we have an hour for lunch. Please also visit our vendors or our booth if you have any more questions.